Hello, this is Nilanjana and I welcome you all to Srijan Wednesday webinars. For those who are attending for the first time, this is a community initiative by Srijan Technologies. As a part of this initiative, we host webinars every alternate Wednesday. We invite experts from different domains who talk on subjects like content technologies, UI/UX, mobile apps, media, entrepreneurship, community building, digital marketing, and many more. Today's webinar will explore the power of entrepreneurship and the need to create more entrepreneurial nations. Our speaker will talk about how entrepreneurship is not just about business, but also personal development, innovation, curiosity, and the learning to be of service to others. As entrepreneurs succeed, they are better able to help the next generation of dreamers and creators. We will learn how this process can turn success into a renewable resource, and that in itself is a very powerful idea. I would now like to introduce our speaker for today's webinar. We have with us Rick Spence. Rick is a business writer, entrepreneur, and consultant in Toronto, Canada. He sits on the board of a global software company and is also a business coach and mentor. He is also the director of Startup Canada, a national entrepreneur-led organization striving to make Canada the best place in the world to start and grow a business. He is the former editor of Profit, the magazine for Canadian entrepreneurs, and also a columnist for National Post newspaper. Rick is the author of Secret of Success from Canada's fastest growing companies and the forthcoming Startups for Heroes, the Veteran's Guide to Entrepreneurship. Thank you, Rick, for joining us today. Before we get started with the session, I would request all participants to please type in any questions that you have during the presentation, and we'll take them up in the last 15 minutes of this session. Also, please don't forget to take the conversation live on Twitter using our hashtag SrijanWW. You can share your thoughts by tagging us and Rick in your tweets using our handles @Srijan and @RickSpence. So, without taking up any more of your time, let's get started. Rick, over to you.
Thank you so much, Neil and John. I've been looking forward to this for quite a while now. I'm very excited about it. And thank you all for joining us. I guess my main point is that increasingly we're all living in a global economy. We are all connected. And this global webinar is proof of that. A global economy empowers us. We get to meet people digitally that we might never have encountered before. We get to see and experience more cultures. The digital economy, the global economy, gives us more choice over what we buy, what we sell, who we work for, and where. The global economy creates a level playing field, a cricket pitch where we can all play a role, regardless of our nationality, our gender, our ethnic origin, and to a growing degree, regardless of our economic status. In a global economy, we all have more opportunities, but it also creates more shared problems. Our global economy, despite our increasingly diversified sources of wealth and economic activity, it's fraught with problems and crises. Around the world, economies are struggling with slow growth, high government deficits, obsolete business models, and nagging chronic unemployment. Traditional economic development strategies really just lure companies from one location to another, usually at great cost, but these tactics only rarely create new wealth. Meanwhile, persistent unemployment, especially among young men, is considered a key cause of rootlessness and alienation. How can communities and nations solve these problems? In my experience, the solution is to create stronger communities of educated, creative, and confident entrepreneurs. At its root, entrepreneurship is not just about business. It's about personal development, innovation, curiosity, and learning to be of service to others. In both developed and developing countries, we need to raise awareness about entrepreneurial possibilities and ensure that the opportunities are there for engaged, focused entrepreneurs to succeed. Successful entrepreneurs create innovation and jobs. More subtly, they create ecosystems of optimism, which can become self-replicating. As entrepreneurs succeed, they encourage more entrepreneurs to start businesses, and the veteran entrepreneurs are in a strong position to support the growth and development of that next generation. By learning to create more entrepreneurial communities and countries, we can turn success into a renewable resource. Some of you, the sort of people who give up an evening to attend a webinar on entrepreneurial nations, you might say this is pretty obvious stuff, but let me assure you that it's not obvious at all. Our countries, our regions and cities, they're all discovering the benefits of entrepreneurship at different speeds and with varying levels of enthusiasm. Entrepreneurial growth is often perceived as an unwelcome disruption. It's a jarring change that makes many people, especially established interest groups, makes them feel uneasy or even hostile. Big businesses, unions, taxi companies, churches and schools, bricks and mortar retailers, and legacy media companies have all spent lots of energy and lots of money trying to hold back the tide of innovation here and there. But when we look at the world today and the many problems we face, including unemployment, economic stagnation, climate change, and the intermittent distribution of wealth around the planet, it should be clear that we need more change and not less. The globalization of the economy has left a lot of people angry and confused. Some of them feel left out. In general, though, globalization has brought us rising living standards around the world, and this growth will be sustained and expanded by visionary entrepreneurs and organizations who understand the huge opportunity that comes from building a better fed, better educated, and better employed global population. Just before we get on with this, I'd like to know a little bit more about you guys. So Nilanjana has a poll, if you don't mind completing it, taking a moment or two to do that. Nilanjana?
The poll is online, and I would request all participants to please vote in, and you'll have about 60 seconds to put in your answer.
Do you want me to keep talking in that time, or should we just have dead air?
We would like our participants to first put in their answers, and then we can move ahead with the webinar.
Okay.
I hope everybody has voted in. We have about 5 more seconds to go. Alright, the
Thank you
poll
very much.
is now closed, and 35% of our listeners say that they are entrepreneurs. 8% are leaders and managers in a bigger business. 54% of our listeners would like to be entrepreneurs, and 4% consider themselves to be supporters of entrepreneurs. Rick, over to you.
Thank you so much, Nilanjana. That sounds like my kind of audience. So thanks very much for doing that. Before we get talking about entrepreneurial nations, I want to look back at the role of entrepreneurs in the country that I know best, which is Canada. The modern history of Canada began as a few dots on the map of North America. It was called New France. Just a few settlements around Quebec City and Montreal on the St. Lawrence River. They were under the thumb of the King of France and the Catholic Church. And together they wanted nothing more than to create a compliant rural peasant society that would hang on to all of this land in North America until France could decide what to do with it. But as in any group, there were a number of plucky souls who didn't like to be restricted and controlled in that way. They didn't want to hide behind the stockaded walls of Montreal or Quebec. So they ventured out to explore the country, and they were the coureurs de bois. They were the first entrepreneurs in Canada. They were the runners of the woods. And they ventured upstream and downstream throughout the interior of North America, trading trinkets and valuables for beaver pelts, which were sought after for hats in the markets of very sophisticated Europe. As the French entrepreneurs mixed with the indigenous peoples of North America, they gave rise to a new generation called Métis, children of the New World and the Old. They were hardy people, devil-may-care. They were totally unsuited to city life. They didn't really fit in anywhere. They didn't fit into French society. They didn't really fit into the native society anymore. And so they traveled all over North America. They were the ones who mapped it. If you look at the map there, the yellow part in the middle, around the Great Lakes, all the way into the prairies in the center of the continent. The Métis, the Coureurs de Bois, uh, went all over there. They mapped those lands and they claimed them for France. France wasn't able to hold on to them, but the fur trade essentially drove the development of Canada for more than 100 years. It wasn't until the world wars of the 20th century that Canada actually began to develop its own industrial economy. We went from being a cutter down of trees, a country that mined goods or farmed, and we became an industrial economy due to the needs of war production during the 20th century. And that was the process that industrialized Canada and enabled us to start building up the banking system and the industries that enabled a new generation of Canadian entrepreneurs to take over. The result of that, building on that tradition of the Coureurs de Bois and their huge fur canoes, today the Canadian economy is largely driven by entrepreneurs. You may have heard of some of them. In the top row here on the left, we have Kevin O'Leary. He's a software entrepreneur from Montreal who built a small empire of software companies, and then later he became a television star through the Canadian reality TV program Dragon's Den, and then he got much better known through being on the American version of that show, which is Shark Tank. Beside Kevin, you'll see two world-changing entrepreneurs. They're Mike Lazaridis and Jim Balzilli, the former co-CEOs of Research in Motion, now known as BlackBerry. Now, that company ran into a lot of trouble, but for a while it was a very un-Canadian thing. It was a world leader in telecommunications. It kicked off the whole smartphone craze. Beside them, you may recognize on the right-hand side Alexander Graham Bell, an immigrant from Scotland who invented the telephone in Brantford, Ontario in 1876. At the bottom left, you may recognize Montreal's Lise Wattier, a pioneer in the name brand cosmetics industry. And then in the middle, there's Ted Rogers, who built Canada's first national networks in wireless, internet, and cable TV. And he had to fight off a lot of government regulation to do that. And on the right is Michael Lee Chin, an immigrant from Jamaica, who's built a mutual fund empire in Canada. So I'm not calling this a list of Canada's greatest entrepreneurs. It's really a cross-section of successful business leaders who have had a big impact at the national or international levels. And they demonstrate the multiple impacts that successful entrepreneurs have on their communities. Ted Rogers pushed Canadian telecommunications into the 21st century by sheer force of will. BlackBerry changed the way we all communicate. Through his television appearances, Kevin O'Leary has become a high-profile evangelist for business values, and he's helped lead a culture change in Canada in our approach to entrepreneurship. Lise Wattier has created a foundation to help women escape poverty by gaining self-esteem, re-entering the workplace, starting their own business, or going back to school. And Michael Lee Chin is a philanthropist in both Canada and Jamaica, where he's been named to the Order of Jamaica for building businesses there that reinvest in Jamaica in order to build up its economy, support education there, and offer its citizens more opportunities for business experience and personal growth. As these stories show, I think it's hard to be an entrepreneur and not make a difference. The qualities that make a successful entrepreneur also lead to tremendous accomplishments in other fields. Curiosity, ambition, and confidence are tremendous traits of entrepreneurs. Skills in communication, strategy, and leadership, empathy, and charisma. All these skills and traits give you the ability to create impact wherever you go. So you'll find people with all these skills in a lot of different areas: education, government, big business, science, the arts. But the entrepreneurs are a special breed because they achieve their vision through their own resources, not generally having a corporation or institution or established social position to build on. So it's that confidence and resourcefulness that sets them apart. We can all name many successful entrepreneurs on the world scene: Bill Gates and Steve Jobs, Richard Branson, Elon Musk, the late Anita Roddick of The Body Shop, and of course Oprah. Well known in specific regions are achievers such as Ingvar Kamprad of IKEA in Sweden, Carl and Theo Albrecht of Germany, the founders of ALTO supermarkets, Jamsetty Tata of India's Tata Group, and Kiichiro Toyota, who turned a Japanese loom company into an automaker that would become the world's largest. All of these people started with very few resources, just an urge really to challenge the status quo. Many of them had no intention to be business people, and few expected to achieve the type of success they did. But all of them found that their success at disrupting their chosen markets awakened an instinct that most of us have, but never really expect to act upon in any significant way. Like many of us, they wanted to make the world a better place. And suddenly they found they had the resources to do that. So now we see the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation supporting health and education projects around the world. Bill Gates also developed the Giving Pledge, which encourages billionaires to give at least half their wealth to philanthropic causes. Richard Branson established Virgin Unite, a nonprofit foundation that tackles tough social and environmental problems. Tata Group founder Jamsetty Tata formed the J.N. Tata Endowment in 1892 to provide Indian students scholarships to study abroad. Today, the Tata Trusts form India's largest philanthropic organization. So what I'm finding is that entrepreneurs live in a very different business world from the one that I discovered when I became a business journalist way back in the 1980s. Don't tell anybody it was that long ago, please. In many businesses, in those days, the goal was to make as much money as you could, as fast as you could, and it was nobody's business how you spent it. And there's nothing wrong with that as long as you do it fairly and legally. But entrepreneurs have led a culture change in North America and around the world in which business leaders today believe that they can create businesses that are not only profitable, but positive contributors to society. When I was editor of Profit, the magazine for Canadian entrepreneurs back in the 1990s, we polled our readers and found they were passionately devoted to giving back to their communities. At a time when the newspapers were saying it wasn't business's job to support society, entrepreneurs were telling us, yes, it is our job. And today we see more and more entrepreneurs now launching social enterprises, which are a new type of business, a for-profit business that has an equal commitment to solving social problems as much as they want to make money. Even when entrepreneurial companies aren't committed to social good, they're usually positive forces anyway. Entrepreneurs bring positive changes to markets. They can only succeed in their business if they create more value than their competitors. Sometimes they do that through lower prices, better quality, or smarter marketing. Often they do it with new products, innovative services, or newer technologies that make their customers happier or more productive. So these are all reasons that I think we need to seriously embrace entrepreneurial values and make sure that our communities, our societies, and our countries embrace those values as well. For many years, I've been associated with the Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year program in Canada, which conducts extensive national searches to find the most successful and impactful business leaders across the country. In my experience, you find very few people on these lists who don't improve conditions for their customers and their community. I've also had the opportunity to go to Monte Carlo twice to attend the World Entrepreneur of the Year Forum, where Ernst & gathers the women entrepreneurs from its 50 EOI programs around the world. One year, I chose to interview as many entrepreneurs from former communist countries as I could in order to find out what that experience was like. And last time I was there, I focused on entrepreneurs in South America. Although we share the same hemisphere, most Canadians know little about everyday life and business in Latin America outside of the most common tourist destinations, so I was curious to know more. The entrepreneurs from these different continents taught me that although their locations are different, their stories are very similar, and so is their ability to positively influence their community or their country. The first entrepreneur I interviewed in Monte Carlo was medical doctor Ruth Olscher, who grew up in Estonia under communist rule. The hospital she worked in as a medical doctor had access only to low-quality disinfectants. Every day when I washed my hands, she said, I longed for products that wouldn't harm people. As the Soviet Union dissolved, Olscher found she had a lot more autonomy in how she ran her department. She began buying more benign chemicals from the United Kingdom. By 1997, medical colleagues in Estonia and in Lithuania were asking her to order disinfectants for them too. So she launched her own importing business, and later on she started producing her own chemicals. Today, Olscher's company, Chemipharm, produces 100 products, including cleaning agents and eco-friendly cosmetics. With about 100 employees and contract workers, Chemipharm exports half of its production to the EU, to Russia, and even to parts of Asia. Its motto, for a healthier world. Other entrepreneurs had similar stories of being successful by creating incredible experiences, positive experiences for their communities and their customers. Mao Weihua, an innovative Chinese entrepreneur, built his country's sixth largest bank by introducing new banking technologies to Chinese consumers way ahead of its state-owned competitors. I also met the manager of a former collective farm in Czechoslovakia who formed a trucking business after the fall of communism. Now he has more than 2,000 employees handling logistics for many major European brands. František Piskanin told me, "We try to understand customers' needs and bring them new solutions they had no idea could exist." Now that's creating value, not just creating value by producing better products and services, but by introducing people to whole new ways of doing things. František came by his entrepreneurship and those business instincts very honestly. His grandfather was an entrepreneur before the communists came in, and I found it reassuring to see that the entrepreneurship maybe you can suppress it for a generation or two, but it will find a way to flourish. And from Chile, I met Jorge Nazer, a lawyer who tried to sell local municipalities on a new data-driven approach that he'd come up with to reducing crime. They didn't think it would work, so he stopped trying to sell to municipalities and started approaching supermarkets and other big retailers who were the chief victims of shoplifting. He applied his model at one Walmart store and reduced losses within a year. He reduced the losses to theft by 50%. Today, ALTO services protect more than 3,500 stores in Chile, Colombia, Mexico, and Spain. And in 2010, the government of Chile hired Nazer to develop a national crime reduction strategy. In 4 years, he told me, we reduced street crimes by 25%. So again, an entrepreneur with an ambition in business and in society. And today, he says that was never his chief motivation. My ambition, said Nazer, is to change the world through safer neighborhoods and safer cities. So when you see entrepreneurship through this lens of people all over the globe working together, businesses and customers, to push change forward together, you begin to understand why entrepreneurship is so important. Change rarely springs from institutions or academics or governments. They may have good ideas, but they rarely have the persistence to pursue their singular vision through years of development and years of rejection. The great creative individual is capable of more wisdom and virtue than collective man ever can be, said philosopher John Stuart Mill. The individual is capable of more wisdom and virtue than collective man can ever be. As you probably know, successful entrepreneurs can become significant forces in today's economies. In Canada, we have about 1 million small and medium-sized businesses that have employees. We've got another million or more that are self-employed, like myself. These companies, those 1 million SMEs, they contribute more than 30% of Canada's gross domestic product. So they're almost a third of the economy. They employ about 5 million Canadians, or just under half of the private sector workforce. Between 2001 and 2011, small firms accounted for 43% of all jobs created by the private sector. In 2010, Canadian small businesses were responsible for $77 billion in exports, or about 25% of Canada's total export trade. So for a country that many people think of as dominated by big businesses, you can see that in an advanced economy like this, small and medium-sized businesses have a huge role to play. They're responsible for employment growth, and they're taking increasing shares of exporting and of global and of economic activity in general. And I believe entrepreneurship is only going to grow. A recent Canadian study by Startup Canada and the retailer Staples confirmed that entrepreneurship is growing in popularity, particularly among millennials and retirement-aged baby boomers. And the major drivers leading to startups aren't related to money. When asked about their motives for starting a business, approximately half of the respondents cited a desire to fill a gap in the marketplace or gain more flexibility and autonomy in their work. 40% expressed a drive to change the world and leave a positive legacy. So entrepreneurship isn't just a refuge in a time of high unemployment. It's not a fad created by the internet. Entrepreneurship is the future. It's what people want to do, and it's what people want to do because it aligns so well with their skills and their values, and frankly, the lack of opportunities that they often see in conventional job markets. Entrepreneurship is a way of taking charge of your own economic future at the same time as expressing your personality and making the world better. So this is why you find more and more countries and politicians and economists are embracing entrepreneurship. We know now that governments really can't create jobs. Big business can create jobs, but they often don't. Their first principle tends to be cost containment. In Canada, our biggest companies have come under a lot of scrutiny for hoarding cash. That they would rather hoard the cash than invest it. They'd rather acquire each other than try and launch new products or projects that would actually create jobs. Big businesses fear risk, and they don't seem to have much faith in their own abilities to innovate and capture new markets. So innovation and job creation are best when they come from risk-taking entrepreneurs. But there is a role for bigger businesses in an entrepreneurial world, and it's why we have to create entrepreneurial economies. Even in economies where we think big business has all the answers, they still need small business. So when I was editor at Profit magazine, we launched a survey of Canada's fastest growing companies. The Profit 100 included high growth tech companies, construction firms, business services, consultants, telecoms, a wide range of organizations. What we soon discovered as we grew that list to 200 companies, then 300, and now it's 500, we discovered that this ranking of growth companies became corporate Canada's favorite shopping list. What happened is that as soon as that issue of the magazine came out once a year, many of these companies on the list started getting calls from big businesses wanting to buy solid, profitable firms in their industry. Our magazine became the catalyst for many acquisitions over the years. Unfortunately, we didn't get a commission, but it's okay, we were glad to do it. Because since most big businesses aren't good at launching new products, they might as well do what they are good at. And that's buying smaller companies and using their knowledge and resources to expand that company's capabilities and its markets. So it's a marriage made in heaven between the entrepreneurs and the bigger companies that have the cash. It works out for everyone. Big business gets a new asset to buy and grow, while the entrepreneur gets the exit that they dreamed of. And what usually happens is that the entrepreneurs get tired of working for the bigger company. They miss the days when they were calling the shots. So as soon as their non-competition clause expires, they usually rush back into the same industry with a new startup with a new angle. What's interesting, though, is at this time the entrepreneur has more experience and more resources. So the second startup is usually smarter and stronger than the first one was. Even those entrepreneurs who don't rush out to start another company, they don't usually go far from business. They don't tend to retire. They might become an angel investor or a mentor. And that's what makes entrepreneurship so powerful. When you set up a successful entrepreneurial ecosystem, it has the potential to become self-sustaining. Early stage entrepreneurs create great companies, sell out years later, and then start other companies or invest in them. Often they do both, which means entrepreneurship becomes a renewable resource. Every generation spins the wheels for the next generation, and you create success on an ongoing basis. Every country on earth wishes it had more renewable resources, things like water power, unique tourist assets, biofuels, or sustainable agriculture. All the other assets, technology, patents, minerals, oil and gas, they all run out. But the country that nurtures its entrepreneurs has the opportunity to create sustainable, endless waves of entrepreneurship. And this leads us to another reason why entrepreneurship is so important in today's economy. Entrepreneurs succeed by creating value. They create new products or services or more efficient processes. Their innovation makes other firms better. And that creates new opportunities for other entrepreneurs to build on the improvements that the first companies pioneered or find better ways of delivering to market. Entrepreneurs commercialize new ideas. They copy each other. They leapfrog each other. And these innovations power further innovation for customers and competitors. An entrepreneurial economy is one of unending experimentation and improvement. For big businesses, working in an entrepreneurial economy is a gift. They're constantly exposed to new ideas, technologies, and perspectives that can make their businesses stronger if they're paying attention. More and more, we're seeing big businesses admitting that you can learn a lot from startups. So they flock to places like Silicon Valley or Bangalore to absorb new ideas and cultures from the technology and startup communities. In Canada, our Silicon Valley is Waterloo, Ontario. It's the home of BlackBerry. We're seeing more and more big companies gravitate to Waterloo to learn from the startup entrepreneurs and to have a taste of that culture. The Communitech Hub in Kitchener-Waterloo is shown here. It's in this old tanning factory for animal hides. And that's where the startups and incubators are now. And that's attracted other companies to set up offices in the same building. Google Canada, Shopify, an international accounting firm, and a national hardware retailer, Canadian Tire. They all know that their future hinges on innovation and on access to this kind of a disruptive culture. But not everyone is ready to embrace entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurs can be a tough bet. They can be unruly, rebellious, and hard to control. And success is anything but predictable. As every venture capitalist learns, you have to invest in a lot of different entrepreneurs before you can expect to hit home runs. And most established power bases are suspicious of these unpredictable change agents. When I started out covering the small business field as editor of a magazine about entrepreneurs, I found lots of resistance. When we tried to get a major Canadian bank to sponsor our study of Canada's fastest growing companies, one bank executive told me, "I'm not so sure growth is a good thing." He didn't think we could handle it. Soon after, I joined an association dedicated to promoting entrepreneurship education in my home province of Ontario. But soon after that, our province elected a mildly socialist government. And they told us that they didn't like entrepreneurs. They didn't want to support entrepreneurship education because they didn't think small and medium-sized places were good places to work. They didn't pay as well as big businesses, and they were rarely welcoming to the unions that put that government in power. 20 years later, it's hard to meet a politician who doesn't praise small business and entrepreneurs, but that doesn't mean they get it. In Canada's recent federal election, which was held last fall, the winning party won the scorn of the tech sector during the campaign by threatening to raise the taxation on stock options for early-stage companies. They just didn't realize that options are essential recruiting tools for early-stage startups. Similarly, none of the four parties vying for power in the election ever offered a policy around technology and innovation. They don't understand that innovation is the source of future growth and prosperity. So we still have work to do here. Even in Canada, there's much we need to do to ensure a future for entrepreneurs and startups. As Nilanjana mentioned, I'm the director of an organization, Startup Canada, whose goal is to make Canada the best place on earth to start and grow a business. Let me share some of the things that Startup Canada is doing to achieve those objectives. We learned on our first national tour 3 years ago that promoting entrepreneurship and the entrepreneurial culture on a national level starts with building community on a local level, bringing together entrepreneurs, suppliers, and support organizations in each city to understand each other better, improve the way they deal with each other, and eliminate gaps in the system. So Startup Canada now has more than 20 affiliated startup communities in big cities and small towns across Canada from the Atlantic to the Pacific. And we're about to add a new one in the Yukon Territory, way to the north, in a town called Whitehorse. We follow the startup community model created by Colorado entrepreneur Brad Feld, using entrepreneurs to build long-term, sustainable, passionate groups to assist and encourage local entrepreneurs. By building entrepreneurial capacity at the grassroots level, Startup Canada is developing its own national base to support its activism and lobbying at the provincial and federal levels. Among the things that we've learned is we've learned how to communicate with entrepreneurs across the country through podcasts, tweet chats, speeches, events, and tours that inform entrepreneurs as well as help explain our culture and our objectives to them. We partner with existing leaders and organizations. We tell them we aren't there to compete with them. We're not out to make turf wars. We're helping to enhance their efforts and connect them to more of the other people in the entrepreneurial ecosystem in each community. We try not to accept government money. We are nonpartisan fans of entrepreneurs. not of parties or ideologies. For the startup capital that Startup Canada needs, we've partnered with visionary organizations that understand the importance of entrepreneurship in Canada and also recognize their own need to associate with and learn from exciting and knowledgeable entrepreneurs. Two of our corporate partners have told me that what they've learned by hanging out with Startup Canada and the entrepreneurs it attracts has been worth far more than the funds that they've invested in their sponsorship. Today, Startup Canada initiatives include promoting financial literacy, export awareness, co-working spaces, and the role of women entrepreneurs. It runs a regional and national awards programs, not just for startups and other entrepreneurs, but to recognize the best entrepreneurship support programs and organizations and make sure that the people who are having an impact get recognized for that. It also disperses grants to promising entrepreneurship development initiatives, and it's creating its own investment funds. And it's always looking for new ways to build a better support system and stronger links between entrepreneurs in Canada and abroad. So how can other cities or countries create more entrepreneurial cultures? Start where you live. Do what you can. Welcome all who support your vision and entrepreneurial diversity. I love the line here from startup Prince George. This is way up in the north of British Columbia, which is on Canada's west coast. And they say, you were never meant to do it alone. Many entrepreneurs feel lonely. If you can help them overcome that feeling they're up against the world, then you're building a community. Entrepreneurs face so many challenges. How does a community raise entrepreneurs, help them understand risk and risk management? How does it connect them to sources of capital and mentorship? The average business in Canada doesn't last 5 years. So the real question is, how can we increase the chance of success for the entrepreneurs in our community? We don't necessarily have to get more entrepreneurs, but if we can reduce the failure rate, we are building up the ecosystem and building the economy. So the question of how you increase the chances of success for entrepreneurs in your community, you help them by creating a true community, a community dedicated to entrepreneurial ambition, growth, and success. Hillary Clinton said, it takes a village to raise a child, and it takes a community to grow a business. When the entire community stands behind their entrepreneurs, those crazy, erratic risk takers can have more confidence to do their thing. And as they succeed, they are training, inspiring, and funding the next generation of entrepreneurs, creating that virtuous circle of growth and prosperity that we've talked about. What do entrepreneurs need to succeed? They need access locally to mentors who've been there and understand the problems startups face. The fact that so many entrepreneurs and other business leaders love to mentor young people means that you can help make those connections. Entrepreneurs also need dedicated bankers and accountants and funders who can help them hone their business plans, tap capital, and avoid unnecessary risks. They need an eager and capable workforce that understands business, believes it to be a worthwhile endeavor, and is prepared to work hard. They need consultants and creative types who can help them improve their products, their services, and marketing so they can reach their potential. And they need informed guides, often from government, to help them access all the sources of assistance that are available to small business and yet can be so hard to track down. And all of these incredible gifts your community can provide or not. If it chooses to provide these services, your community will thrive culturally and economically. If your community can't be bothered, if it chooses not to engage and coordinate this support, your entrepreneurs will face greater risks than necessary, and your community will no longer determine its own destiny. We've got just a couple more minutes, but I wanted to do one more poll here. If Nilanjana could bring up the poll, and what we want to do is just get a feel for what you think, how you think your community, your ecosystem embraces entrepreneurial values.
The poll is now open for voting, and once again, our listeners have about 60 seconds to put in their vote.
And as soon as you've done all that, then I will wrap up.
Yes, we have our votes still coming in. We have another 30 seconds to go.
I'm eager to find out what people say.
Okay, I hope all our listeners have voted in, and I will close the poll right now. So, according to the polls, 7% say that their communities actively discourage entrepreneurship. 43% people say that they have very little support for entrepreneurship. Similarly, 43% of our listeners also say that their communities are great at supporting entrepreneurship. And again, 7% have no opinion about the matter. So, Rick, over to you again.
Okay, I'm glad to hear we have a very opinionated group. That's excellent. Thank you for that. For those who say there's very little support in the community, I hope you'll take away from this presentation that there's a lot of things that individuals and small groups, individual activists, can do to help start to build that capacity and to create the support that entrepreneurs really need. And just a very small group can make a difference. Startup Canada was started by two 28-year-olds in Ottawa who just took some time off because they thought Canada needed something like this, and they've created an organization with tremendous impact. So I want to finish by just asking you what you think people or organizations can do on a broader scale to enhance the entrepreneurial culture of their nation or their community. I want to share with you 10 ideas that I would love you to think about and maybe even run with. Some of them are pretty ambitious. Some of them are easy. Some of them might require some adjustment and some change. Others are easy and might be fun. So here are 10 ways from some of the things that I've seen happen and some of the things I would like to see happen. 10 ways to create a more entrepreneurial nation in your nation or a more entrepreneurial community. Number one is to create a national financial literacy strategy or campaign. We discovered financial literacy, the ability of entrepreneurs to really understand their own financial statements and to take positive steps to building up their capital or enhancing their cash flow or reducing their expenses. We found that the level of financial literacy was very low, and it was a matter of low-hanging fruit in a way to team up with a national software firm to help create a cross-country financial literacy campaign. Number two, a second way to create a more entrepreneurial nation, build towards a national television innovation channel. It doesn't have to be on TV, it could be on YouTube. Dedicate it to entrepreneurship, opportunities, technology, disruption, research, and personal growth and development for entrepreneurs. There is a huge appetite for information on all of these things, and we need quality sources of this type of information. Number three, create a Made in Your Country national awards program that would celebrate entrepreneurship, vision, invention, and execution. Possibly your country already has an Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year program. They're in more than 50 countries now. Or you may have something similar. You can add this on top of it. You can't have enough award programs for entrepreneurs, for young entrepreneurs, for senior entrepreneurs, for women entrepreneurs, for minority entrepreneurs. We need as many of these programs as we have, and you have to go out and get buy-in and participation at the highest levels of society and government to make sure that the entrepreneurs' values are better understood, better communicated, and become more viral. Number four, develop a national website or a community level website telling the stories of your top entrepreneurs. I suggest 500 is a good number, including their best advice for others. Get those entrepreneurial stories in front of people. This will take time. It'll take a while, but there's lots of entrepreneurs. My own experience is that every entrepreneur has an amazing story to tell if you get them to sit down and chat, and they're happy to chat about those stories, and they're happy to share lessons learned. What that does is it helps reduce the learning curve for other entrepreneurs, and it makes other people's stories much more personal to other people when they say, okay, I can learn from what this person has done. I can shorten my own journey by understanding that. Number five, focus on education. Convince schools to embrace entrepreneurship. Some schools are directed on a national level, some on a state or provincial level, some according to region or municipality. Get into the school boards, get into the schools, and create an awareness of entrepreneurship and why it's so important for people. We can't wait for the politicians to do it or the educators. And if you can, create a national database on entrepreneurship and entrepreneurs for teachers. They don't have enough good resources to teach entrepreneurship, so we have to get them the resources that they need, and there's a real role for getting sponsors to help develop that. 5 more ways to create a more entrepreneurial nation or community. Number 6, you may have heard of hackathons. You may have participated in hackathons where technical people and coders get together with marketers and strategists, and they focus on specific problems and bear down for a weekend or for a week or two and concentrate on solving intractable problems. So I want you to refine and expand the hackathon model to focus innovators on new opportunities in unconventional areas, non-IT, non-information technology. Could be economic development, homelessness, tourism, healthcare. In Canada, we do have an organization that is putting on healthcare hackathons in Canada, in the United States, and now around the world. That the hackathon has an ability to bring new ideas into nagging old issues and to change people's minds and attitudes almost overnight. A very powerful source of change and new ideas, and sometimes you even get new businesses developed in a weekend. So look to that as one of the tools that can really work. Number 7, in Ontario, we developed one of these, and I think it could work everywhere. Develop a scale-up community initiative. Once people are comfortable with the idea of startup, let's talk about scaling up and get resources and organizations that help established entrepreneurs take their businesses to the next level. Yes, we all want to support startup entrepreneurs, but we really want as many of them as possible, and it will only be a small percentage at the best of times. So every entrepreneur can make a difference. We want to help those small companies become big companies, be able to export, be able to open up new offices around the country and around the world. So scaling up is an important extension of entrepreneurship assistance, and the sooner that an entrepreneur starts to understand what scaling up means, the more likely they are to be able to survive the experience. Number 8, make all levels of government more conscious of procuring goods and services from small and medium-sized enterprises. Governments make wonderful early adopters and reference customers for entrepreneurs and innovators. So help them see the role that they can play in the ecosystem by being that first customer who will actually pay and help work the bugs out of a system, because not only do they have the chance to get a good product or service that they need, but they're also carrying out their economic development responsibilities at the same time. And number 9, target bureaucracy and paperwork. Declare war on red tape. Encourage governments to review and trim back business regulations and filings. I still talk to, Canada's been doing this for years, I still talk to entrepreneurs who can't believe how much work they had to do to fill out the forms and get their business started and get the approvals they needed. The more we can trim that back, the more people will be able to navigate those hurdles and start successful businesses and grow them. And finally, the Entrepreneur's Pledge. It's similar to what Bill Gates has done with his billionaires. I want you and your country, and we're trying to do it here in Canada, to create a campaign to encourage successful entrepreneurs to give back to the entrepreneurial ecosystem in their community or in their nation. We want to make it cool to support entrepreneurship. We want to make it part of every entrepreneur's obligation to give back, not just to their favorite charity or philanthropic organization, but to give back to the ecosystem to help fund the assistance people need, and make it uncool not to do that. Entrepreneurs are already a big part of turning that ecosystem into a renewable resource. They can do it even better if we get them to donate some money to it as well. So the world economy is erratic and unpredictable. We need more jobs, more confidence, more doers. Entrepreneurial nations and communities solve these problems by creating skilled and resilient business leaders who can generate sustained success. And there's much that you can do, whether you're an entrepreneur, a business manager, a supporter, teacher, or government official, to encourage and strengthen the entrepreneurship ecosystem in your community or your country. In an uncertain world, it should be reassuring to know that your future, your economic future, is in your own hands. I look forward to your questions and comments. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you so much, Rick. That was a really great session. And starting off with the idea of using entrepreneurship and success as a renewable resource, and ending with very actionable 10 points on nurturing entrepreneurship in our own communities. Now, I would request all our listeners, if you have any questions, please type in and we will start taking them up. So, right now, the first question is, what's the name of the lady in the slide where you introduced a couple of Canadian entrepreneurs? We would really like to know the name of the female entrepreneur there.
Yes, her name is Lise Watier, Watier. She has a very successful cosmetics line in North America. She does some exporting beyond, but I'm not sure what markets she's in. And she's done an amazing job of branding herself in a country where we've usually been too shy to do that.
Okay, so next up, one thing that most of our listeners seem to want to know is that what is the most crucial element or characteristic that an entrepreneur must have?
I think the most crucial thing is communication skills. It's not something we often talk about. We usually take it for granted. But the job of the entrepreneur is to figure out an angle, a business model, a niche, and then they have to be able to explain it to people. They have to be able to explain it to colleagues in the business, or perhaps prospective partners. They have to be able to explain it to the bank. If they want to get a loan, they have to be able to explain what it is they're doing. They have to be able to explain it to customers. They have to be able to do that in a very lively and direct way that really puts the value proposition front and center and explains very clearly what the difference is, why we can do it better than anyone else, and why they should buy this solution or service or product from us. So, and then of course, when they have a team behind them in business, they have to constantly work on communication to make sure that everyone remains aligned and motivated. So the job of the entrepreneur is really to connect all these markets, backers, funders, partners, employees, customers, suppliers, and make sure that everyone's aligned and on the same page and talks about things from the same perspective and even using the same language. So communication is by far the most important thing. One of my favorite bits of advice from an entrepreneur I heard was when we asked him for 2 pieces of advice, he said, over-communicate and over-communicate, which I think is good advice.
Okay, so next up is a very interesting question. So it's like, if everybody or most of them in a nation chooses to become an entrepreneur, where will they find the employees? Companies may find it difficult to retain employees after spending too much on trading. So it's a really genuine question that they have, that if everybody is an entrepreneur, who's the employee?
Yeah. Well, there's a couple answers to that. One is that not everyone wants to be an entrepreneur. Some people prefer the safety and security of a job and a salary. And if there's too many entrepreneurs, then there'll be lots of jobs going begging. So those people can find those jobs, which would be a good thing. The other thing is that we are seeing some economies that have become very entrepreneurial, and they're doing very well in apps, in the market for digital apps, iPhone apps, that sort of thing. It's dominated by companies with just 1 or 2 people, and these industries are growing. So it's great to see that there are new models where we create value without needing huge armies of underlings. We built big companies with big bureaucracies because that's what was needed when value was created by large organizations that owned huge buildings and lots of equipment. Now, big buildings, big teams, big high-cost equipment plays a lesser role. It's still necessary in many industries and lines of work, but they're not necessary in more and more and more. which is what is freeing up entrepreneurs to go and do these other things.
So what you would say is that we also have a new kind of economic model now that allows less people to create more value.
Oh, absolutely. And you see that all the time in the technology industry. In Canadian dollars, the rule of thumb is that one employee produces $200,000 worth of sales, whereas in older line businesses, it's usually only 100,000 Canadian dollars. And I'm sure it's American dollar equivalent is pretty similar. So yeah, the ability of the individual to create more value in the information economy is so well documented, and it's an exciting thing to those who get it. At the same time, in Canada, we don't have enough plumbers and upholsterers, so those people are actually making money too, if people want to go into those jobs. So the entrepreneurial economy isn't really taking anything away from anybody. It's creating new sources of economic development, new sources of products and innovation, new sources of solutions to business, and new products for consumers, and competing with conventional organizations, but very often just striking out in whole new ways so consumers have more choice than ever.
Okay, so the next question is, what would be your suggestion for bootstrapped businesses?
Sorry, for what kind of businesses?
Bootstrapped businesses.
Oh, bootstrap.
Yes.
The great thing is there are so many businesses that you can just go into without any money at all. If you want to get into services, I think that the best businesses are business services. There are the whole line for sort of traditional big companies is that they try and shed most of the work that isn't core to what they do. So big companies don't run cafeterias anymore. They don't run their own security. They don't run their own human resources department. So they look for other organizations to provide that. And so the ability of individuals to suddenly become gardeners, restaurant managers, or security guards for big companies by providing these services is amazing. We've had on the Profit 100 list that we did of Canada's fastest growing companies, two of the most common types of companies on those lists were security companies and human resources consulting firms, because businesses need those services, and they're very easy for individuals to get into, and when they need an additional person, they can hire someone usually for a commodity wage, a minimum wage, and with minimum skills to come in and do the job. So business services is a tremendous area for people to get into if they're good at a couple different things but don't have a lot of money.
Okay, so next up, this is a question specific to India. So what would you say about the situation of entrepreneurship in developing economies like India? Would there be any
I don't know.
specific advice?
Yeah, I don't know enough about it. I think that in the emerging economies, there is so much room for growth and innovation. There are traditional people in India. There are people who do things by the book. And there are, I know, lots and lots of people who are like the Courrier de Bois. They're eager to go out and do something different and find their own path. And the opportunities in the developing economies are amazing because there are so many products and services that haven't been introduced to the country, haven't reached their maximum market penetration yet. Lots of ways to get prices down or increase distribution to get things out there. The guy I mentioned from Czechoslovakia, he found that when the Iron Curtain fell and suddenly the Czech Republic and Slovakia were opened up to goods and services from the West, there were incredible opportunities bringing those services and goods to the population. And since he knew how things worked, in his country, he was able to work with the European brands to help them adjust. So there's opportunities like that as well, is to help navigate the migration of goods and services from other countries into India. That might mean export and import, particularly importing, but it could be joint ventures or being someone's representative and saying, okay, we will help you sell your vanilla Coke or whatever in, I guess that's not a good example, but other products in India.
Okay, so what you mean to say is in an emerging economy, you just need to look for the opportunities where you can start providing a new service and fill in gaps in the market.
Yeah, but do some traveling, take a look at other cities, other communities like yours, but perhaps in other countries or a distance away from your own community. See what new things they have. How are they adjusting to change? What kind of new innovations are coming up there? And see, hey, what are some good ideas that I can take and adapt to my own community? These are wonderful days when things are changing very quickly. People are very open to change. So it's a wonderful time to be an entrepreneur and helping to manage that change, helping leverage it, helping make it more efficient, and being paid to do that.
Okay, so next up, the question is something that's specific to your presentation. The question is, what's the name of the healthcare hackathon that you mentioned in Canada?
It's called Hacking Health. It's probably hackinghealth.com, but if you just look up Hacking Health on Google, that will get you there. I know that they've been doing Europe and some places in Asia, and but again, their model is something that anyone can learn from. Hacking Health has been very successful, and they're now also creating their own accelerator for entrepreneurs in both Toronto and Montreal, the two major business cities in Canada, where they will be working with entrepreneurs to help them develop very disruptive ideas. So hackathons are an amazing entryway into change and innovation, and they can take you down some very interesting roads. I was advising a cabinet minister in British Columbia, which, as I mentioned before, is our westernmost province on the Pacific, and the minister was in charge of public safety, and I was saying a hackathon could do amazing things to help you figure out public safety. Public safety is all about communications. It's all about organizing logistics, and that's what IT is for. And so I don't know if they're going to do that or not, but I did my best to push it on them.
Okay, so the next question is, where should we get funds for starting a business?
Okay, a lot of people don't agree with me on this one. I think the best source of funds are the people you know best. And some people say, don't borrow money from family or friends. Don't take investments from family or friends, but I think that's pointless. When you are a startup, you don't have any assets for people to lend against or invest in. All they have is your character and your experience and what they know of your personality. And your family and friends know you best, and hopefully they're the ones who would be most likely to invest in you. So the way to do it, though, is to treat it as a very serious business transaction, to discuss your business plan with, your uncle or aunt or cousins or parents or grandparents, and let them know what you're trying to do. Show them your business plan. Have something written down. Tell them what you would use the money for. Tell them what you think that money will accomplish for you in your business. But let them know that there's a good chance that they will never get their money back. As long as you let them know that in advance, and it's true, no matter how good you think your business plan is, there's a good chance that any given startup will not find the traction they think they will. So as long as you explain right up front that this is a risky investment and they may lose it all, then there's nothing problematic. There should be nothing problematic about losing that money. If you invest it the best way you know how, and it just doesn't work out, then you will have prepared your friends and relatives for that. Some people say that lending, and I pay a lot of attention to the people who take the contrary view from mine, because they have seen it happen. They have seen where someone investing in a business could tear the family apart if it doesn't work out. And that's because the ground wasn't covered properly at first. The parents should never invest, or family or friends should never invest or lend more than they can afford to lend or invest. It should never affect any other sibling and their ability to borrow money or inherit money on an even basis. So if you just follow the common sense rules and do it very openly and transparently and ethically, then that is your very best source of capital, and that will get you a chance to get your business up and running, get some traction, get customer feedback, and put you in a good position to succeed at your startup and get to the point where you can then qualify for investment from more professional investors or possibly a bank or a government program.
Okay, I think that was that was very good advice. Next question is, do you have any specific advice for IT professionals looking to venture into an entrepreneurial role?
Sure, do it, but do it sensibly. Don't quit your day job until you find something you really want to do. Make sure that you understand what it is that you do well. You have to talk to people. Talk to other people in business, and find out what was the hardest part for you. Talk to people who are like you, and people who aren't like you. Sometimes the best businesses are started by by two or more very people. So sometimes it's best if the coder, the tech guy, teams up with a marketer or a business strategist or a salesperson. Someone whose natural inclination is to do the things that you're not good at, and vice versa. That can make a phenomenal team. That's what worked for the two guys at Research in Motion, or BlackBerry, for the longest time. Mike Lazaridis was the technical guy. He was interested in earth-shaking technology, and Jim Balzilli was the MBA, the guy who kept things going, he kept the doors open, and he oversaw the selling. So that was a good team. The other guy I mentioned, the bald guy, Kevin O'Leary, he had a partner in the beginning. Kevin was the upfront man, the salesman, the glad-hander, the visionary, and he had a partner who was an accountant and a by-the-book guy, and he kept Kevin grounded, and they inspired each other. So those partnerships really work. So the best thing is to look at the possibilities of finding a partner who has complementary skills. If your partner has the same skills that you have, chances are one of you isn't necessary for this voyage.
Okay. Next up, our question is, I think you've answered it once previously, but it's still come in as a question. So, what is a necessary thing for a startup to have? Like, first up, what are some of the basics that you should have for a startup to function?
Sorry, just the first step, you mean?
Or some of the basic things that should be in place for a startup to function?
Oh, okay. I'm a bit old-fashioned. I like a business plan. What does a business have to have in place? Well, it's got you and maybe some other people. It's got an idea, and you don't need a lot of equipment anymore. You can rent or borrow it. You don't need to rent an office now or buy real estate for most startups, because you can do it in a garage or in the spare bedroom or whatever. What you need is a plan, and what the business plan is it's where you test your model. You come up with a business model, you think, okay, this app is needed, this new product or service will find a very ready market. The business plan is the way you figure out how you're going to produce that product, who you're going to sell it to, how you're going to sell it to them, how you're going to fulfill on your commitments to your customers, and how you're going to fund that. So the business plan means that you're a mature individual who can sit down and plan this out so that you anticipate problems in advance. What typically happens is that people get excited about an idea. They start getting very involved in the production of a product or service. They don't spend enough time talking to customers to find out what does the customers really want. Do they really want a solution, or would they like something that costs twice as much but does twice as many things? You've got to talk to the customers. You've got to make sure you talk to the suppliers to make sure they can supply you and that they can supply you at the price. I've talked to so many entrepreneurs who thought they had a deal with a supplier. They started taking orders, and then suddenly the supplier doubled the price on them. They were the only ones who could supply a product or service, and the entrepreneur was stuck because now they had orders to fulfill and no choice but to go with this supplier who had just doubled the price on them. So there are so many things that can go wrong in a business because you're so dependent on other people and on things happening and working out. So a business plan gives you a chance to think through all of these relationships you need to build, all of the problems that could happen, all of the commitments that you're making, and make sure that it all sticks together. And the most important thing is just talking to the customer. Nowadays, with the lean startup, there's a lot of with the lean startup methodology, there's a lot of people who just want to start doing and start calling on customers and selling stuff. I think you still have to do these basics before you get out there. The most important thing is talking to customers, but understanding the risks, understanding the financing, understanding your supply chain, and understanding your customers are all equally important in the end, because any one of them can bring you down.
Okay, next up we have a question. Is it the boom for right now? It's a period of growth for most startups, but do you think it will continue in the future, or is it just a passing thing?
I think that as long as startups are focusing on creating value for customers, I think it will continue. And what's really fueling entrepreneurship now is the fragmentation of markets. So I've never been in an Indian grocery store. I don't know what's on your shelves. In Canada, the Canadian grocery store shelf used to have 2 types of tea. Now we have hundreds. We used to have 3 types of chocolate. Now we have dozens. We used to have 2 brands of ice cream. Now we've got 6 or 7, and it comes in all kinds of different flavors that we didn't used to see, or in different formats. There are new market niches everywhere. You can extend that from the grocery store to the hardware store to the clothing store, to business supplies. We have more choice than ever. So entrepreneurs are fueling that because they understand the markets. They understand that consumers are fickle. Customers always want something better, so they're providing that. We used to have spaghetti as our only type of pasta here, and now we have 100 types of pasta. And there are always new ones and new types of pasta sauces coming along, and that's a wonderful thing. So there's no sign that we're all going to go back to thinking alike and buying alike. So to me, there's no question. Entrepreneurs will continue to be able to explore new niches and create new value, and because every new product, every new innovation that comes along creates its own ecosystem. When the iPhone came out, it created a whole mini industry of people creating iPhone accessories, from cases and headphones and speakers and radios and things. It created a whole new industry. So every new product has the potential to spin off more products and services around it. So I don't think big business is getting any smarter. So small business will always be in the role. Entrepreneurs will always have this role of introducing innovation and new products to people, and we just want more and more of it all the time. We don't want any less.
Okay, so this is the last question that we have for the session. For emerging economies, what do you think would be a sector or domain that has the highest chance of entrepreneurs coming in and making new products or contributing new services? What would be the most emerging sector or domain?
Yeah. Um, I think that's a very broad question. I apologize for not knowing enough about emerging markets. I've been focused on Canada and its emerging culture for a long time. In general, I think there are numerous opportunities for emerging markets, whether it's business services, whether it's construction, whether it's consumer goods, consumer services, um, telecommunications. There are so many areas where you can innovate that it partly depends on what your background is and who your connections are. Um, some of the best entrepreneurs are people who grew up in a family and had parents who worked in this industry or that industry, and the parents have brought them up to understand that industry, and so they can see opportunities that people just looking at those industries as outsiders can't see. So it's really a matter of following your instincts. I think anything in construction is big. Um, the whole world is undergoing a construction boom, and it comes and goes a little bit as the economy contracts and inflates. But finding better ways to build better housing and better offices, better stores, better schools for for the developing world is incredibly important. There are different ways working with different materials that will work better in various countries and various locations within those countries. So I would say there are amazing opportunities. In Canada, we have people still doing amazing things with log homes, coming up with new technologies for cutting down trees and using the timber for homes, for wooden homes. There is still innovation going on in wood technology where you can make a wooden girder that's as strong as steel. Lots of development going on in an area that hasn't had enough of innovation and R&D going on in it. So whatever industry you're closest to is probably the ripest for introducing new products and disruption. But if I were to pick one off the top of my head, I think construction and home building is an area that's always looking for new solutions, better ideas, better economies, and ripe for entrepreneurial activity.
Okay, so we have just had another question come in, so I'm quickly going to take that up. But I would like to request all our listeners to forward any more questions that they have to webinars@srijan.in. You could also connect with our speaker over Twitter @RickPence, which you can see on your screens right now. So the last question that we have
And
is,
excuse me, I'd be happy to hear from them. If someone does have a question, I'd be happy to chat online through email.
okay, so our listeners, please connect with Rick over email or Twitter, and he will be happy to answer your questions. So the last question for tonight is, if you have a startup and you have to be evolving continuously in order to maintain your position in the market, so what kind of a rule should one follow to maintain their place in the market?
To meet their place in the market,
Yes.
um, I think it all comes down to how you treat your employees. Um, Obviously, customer service is important, but the thinking that's getting more and more prominent in business circles now is that your employees already know how to treat customers. It's your ability to engage your employees that determines how well they will serve the customers. So if you can continually motivate your employees and convince them that your business, that the work they're doing is important to them and to the world, then they will bend over backwards to give customers better service. And we're seeing lots of companies now in Canada, in the United States, and in other parts of the world where they're focusing on employees first. Keep the employees happy, and they will look after the customers for you, and you don't have to yell at them or worry about quotas and things. You don't have to hold the whip over them. They will do it if you research into what is it that makes employees produce more. And so employee engagement is the big thing that half of companies in North America are now monitoring. Engagement is generally driven by alignment of values between management and workers, by workers thinking that their business, the company that they work for, is not just producing a good product, but it's a good place to work, and that it's a positive contributor to society. And if you can engage people's instincts for doing not just good work, but work that's good for the community, if you can engage them in that and engage their heart as well as their head, then they will provide the service that you need in order to keep the customers, to keep the phones ringing, to provide the service or the quality of product that you need to get. So it's really understanding that once you've started the business, it's your employees who determine how successful it will be, and understanding what will motivate the employees. The general thing you hear today is that people can't be motivated to do something. They either are or they aren't motivated to do something. So if you can find that magic button that motivates them, and that's usually alignment, making a difference, being respected, being communicated to in a respectful way, then you will get that done and your company will move ahead and not fall back.
Okay, so with that great piece of advice, we have come to the end of today's session. Thank you once again, Rick, for leading such a delightful session, and we're sure everyone found your session very interesting and insightful, and everyone is all geared up to create more entrepreneurial communities wherever they are.
Fantastic.
So,
Thank you, Nilanjana. You've done a great job too.
thank you, Rick. So, also a big thank you to all our attendees for joining us today, and you all have been a great audience. I would also like to announce that our next webinar is on Drupal 8 accessibility. It would be hosted on 3rd February 2016 and would be led by Mike Gifford, Accessibility Manager for Drupal 8. For registrations and more details, you'll be getting a mail from our site. So stay tuned, and thank you once again for joining us today.
Thank you all.